Happy Sunday, everybody. You're watching the UpSet podcast, and tonight we are talking about human trafficking coming up right after this. That's right, everybody. You are watching the Upset Podcast. We're so happy that you tuned in this evening. We're looking forward to some great conversation, and we're glad that you chose to stop by here. We hope that you will share this with someone. And when I say I keep saying we're. Who am I talking about? You know, guys, I'm talking about these wonderful people that are joining me, the Upset crew. Hey, everybody.
Hey,
Hello.
happy Sunday.
Good evening.
Happy Sunday. How's everybody doing? That's
Well,
still
yeah.
alive.
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm still here.
It's been a really tough weekend, but I'm just glad to see Sunday come.
Yeah, you know how it is, right?
Yeah.
You know, something I wanted to mention since I brought it up last week, that whole the Carly Russell story.
Oh yeah.
How so much developed over that. I was like, oh my goodness. Last week I'm talking about, this poor woman is missing. She's home now. And then just a few days later, we find out that, the story wasn't exactly what it was. Although some people said they knew from the beginning, they had clues that something was a little off.
I always thought that Jussie Smollett had taken her.
And I've seen the memes now with them together, and I was just like, this is.
Are you saying the whole story was a hoax?
That's
yeah.
what they're concluding, that she had done they have her search records where she's looking up things like Taken, how to like Amber Alerts, like she's looking up a lot of these details that proves that she was planning something. She bought snacks that weren't present at the scene, so it's obvious that she was preparing for this.
No, the kidnapper ate those snacks.
But don't worry, Saints. All of your prayers were not in vain.
That's true.
Yeah, so there's a lot of commentary out there.
That
she
is
did
so
need help.
That's so sad, because if something like that really happens, people will say, "Oh no, it's just a hoax," and
right.
someone could really suffer unto death because no one is really searching for them. That's so sad.
I know.
Well, how about a kid? You see a kid on the street now, you just want to leave him alone, or you don't know what to do, or you don't have that trust in the system anymore.
Yeah, because they're like, he wasn't even there. That was the thing they were saying. But report, I think that was his first indication that something was a little off. No one else saw this toddler. No one else. I mean, there's just so many things that have developed since. I think the family she obviously had to have some help. Where was she? And one of the disturbing things was that, I don't know if you guys remember Anaya Blanchard, the girl who did go missing in Alabama, and they found that she was indeed killed. Her family was out. The mother was out helping look.
Oh wow! Oh my goodness!
Reopening this wound of something that happened, only to find out that this wasn't even a legit situation. So it's heartening in so many ways.
Well, the big question now is because there was another case similar to this woman. Her last name was Papini in California, and she was a white woman, and she disappeared. And when she came back, she said there were two Latino women who abducted her and all that. And then they found out that she had been out with her ex-boyfriend, so her husband wouldn't know. And she went to jail. And there were others like that who went to jail.
Yeah.
And of course, and there were always those people who would white people who would disappear and say a black man did it, and we wanted them to go to jail. Now the question is, what will be our countenance on a black woman saying a white guy did it?
Well, she going to jail.
Yeah,
she's going to jail. Ain't no question.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They were saying, I was listening to some commentary this morning from some local legal professionals, and they were saying that, she definitely needs to have some consequences, legal consequences. But they were saying they feel like the Hoover police station was treating it kind of gingerly because they've had a bad reputation as it relates to dealing with blacks. And so they were kind of, I don't want to say using this, but they wanted to kind of treat it gently to kind of, give their reputation a little bit of a boost. But all I can say is have mercy,
You heard that on the news this morning, Sunday? Wow.
Well, it was a
During
comment.
the week.
It was on social media.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But now, what else has been going on that you guys are seeing or engaged in talking about this week? Nothing much.
Oh yeah, we live exciting lives. You can tell, can't
I
you?
rely on you guys because I rarely watch the news as much as I would. I just saw Friday, I believe, Tony Bennett passed. 96 years old.
That.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. That's a legend.
He really was.
Yeah. So condolences to his family.
Well, there is something out there, and that is the Jason Aldean story about his song "Try This in a Small Town."
Oh, I saw that. I saw the
country
headline.
Country song that's
where
controversy behind it.
Yeah.
Little. I mean,
what are the lyrics that are controversial? What is he?
Basically, it's not so much the lyrics of the song are basically extolling the virtues of small town life, where people have very narrow perspective and they're very stringent in enforcing how they view things. But it's the video that makes the difference. Where like one lyric of the song is, you spit on a cop and cuss him and all of that. And basically, it's saying you don't try this in a small town because we'll take you to task on it and do something to you. But in one part of it, he is standing in front of a courthouse where a young black man was lynched and years ago, and where Thurgood Marshall was almost killed one time in trying to bring justice to bear upon it. This courthouse has a history, and he's standing in front of this courthouse and in the Deep South, and people are saying this is identifying with some of the things that small towns have done in the past about social injustice, so forth.
Yeah, and that's not a good move. Yeah,
no, it wasn't a good look.
I understand the controversy now. Okay, wow.
And as a country western singer, they're always so sensitive to black causes. I was just shocked.
You know what the eyes meant, right?
But speaking of causes, we're going to go ahead and transition into our subject of the night, which is none other than human trafficking. And I'm sure as we say that, different concepts come up in my mind of what it is. And so we kind of wanted to use this evening, to talk about it a little bit, bring a little bit more awareness. Of course, we decided that this is definitely a topic where we want to bring in someone who has a little bit more experience and education to be able to share with us. And so we have with us now
hello,
Cerise Woodard. Hi,
everybody.
Hi, Cerise.
How's everyone?
Good evening, Cerise.
Hello.
Great. Thanks for joining us. And for the people who, some people may know you, some may not, tell them a little bit about yourself.
My name's Cerise Woodard. I am a registered nurse. I am an ambassador for Shared Hope International. I love educating and spreading awareness about this topic of human trafficking. It's such a prevalent issue, and I'm very passionate about it. And so I'm excited to be here with you all this evening.
Thank you, and we appreciate it. So Charles is going to lead us out in this discussion. Take it away, Chuck.
Yeah, thank you. Cerise, again, thank you for being on. As I delved into this topic, I actually found myself getting depressed a little when I saw the magnitude of this issue, and also disappointed that really, especially mainstream media should be screaming about this.
Right.
It's so complex and global. It's just amazing the numbers that have been, all the data points over the years that have been accumulated to let us know the scope of this. So I wanted to, first of all, if we could break it down into, pieces to try to understand the whole scope of things. And I think the end game, at the end of the day, we need to know what we can do about this. Sometimes there are problems that are so big, we feel like, well, you read a headline, I'm sure there are people that'll handle that. We'll pray for them, and that's it. And we don't think about it anymore. It doesn't mess up our day and, whatever. But, in almost all the cultures, it only becomes an issue when it becomes a little headline, especially if it involves a famous person. So I wanted to try to cover as much as we can within our allotted time. And my colleague, Tally, who's had some, on the ground real world experience when it comes to involvement, on a municipal level, especially in the city of Philadelphia. So I'm hoping he could help us understand, even on that local ground level, what he's experienced and what he's done on this topic. So I wanted to start off with the question of how widespread, Cerise, is human trafficking? I know it's sort of a loaded question, but I mean, it's how.
Okay. Can I back up to your conversation about the
Sure.
Carly Russell?
Sure.
I do want to give my 1 cent on that. It's unfortunate that the story wasn't true, because we already know that there's so many missing Black and brown women, people in general, and they don't take it serious as it is. So it does, create an issue in the long run, because, we get one step forward that takes us 10 steps back, right? But since that was a topic, I do want to say that is such a minute portion, like false reports. So let's always err on the side of believing the person versus not, because the percentage is so small. But I also want to start by clarifying human trafficking, as far as there are two different sides to it. There's labor, and then there's sex trafficking. So there's labor trafficking, and sex trafficking equals human trafficking. So when we say human trafficking, we can be talking about both. So human trafficking is 28 million people worldwide are being trafficked in some form or another, or both. Some of them are sex and labor. So that is how pervasive it is. That's worldwide. As far as numbers, we have the National Human Trafficking Hotline that compiles data. And so that data is only based on who has called in, or a case being called in. And we always know that the data lags behind. So for 2021, for the United States, there were around 16,500 people that made contact with the human trafficking hotline. So just think about that number being probably 5 times more of people who are actually in trafficking situations, because that's just the number that called in. And then you have so many more who haven't called in. You have people who don't even realize that they are actually being trafficked. So there's that.
So, Risa, I wanted to ask you, in my research of this, I found one category of human trafficking, and you tell me if there's any real truth to this: debt bondage.
Yes, and that falls under labor, because they're working for someone, trying to work off a debt that they'll never be able to work off.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how does one get trafficked? Let's use one category. Well, we just touched on labor, What about the other category of trafficking? How does that end up happening to an individual or a community or whatever?
Right. Great question. So the main factor in being trafficked is vulnerability. So that puts all of our youth at risk, right? Because they're vulnerable just because of their age and inexperience alone. Then when you factor in, you know, people who have migrated or relocated, substance use, mental health concern, children in the welfare system, runaways, um, those are all vulnerable populations. So that automatically puts you in a situation to be trafficked. So say someone um, promises you a job, you know, you want to eat. So you start
Mm,
working. That's
mm,
where you have your debt bondage and things like that that come into place. Um, but if we want to break down the different types of trafficking situations, so a lot of people, the movie Taken, a lot of people love
mhm,
that movie. I love that movie, so don't get me wrong. I love the movie because I like action movies, but that is such a small percentage of people who are trafficked.
mhm,
That
You
was
might want to tell people what makes that a small percentage because some people haven't seen the movie Taken, and
right.
unlike me, they don't have a specific set of skills that makes them.
So abduction is
Yeah.
about
mm,
6% of the cases that were called in.
mm,
So that's a very, very small percentage, right? Um, 2% is through people are trafficked through coercion. So that would be threats and blackmail. Um, that number will probably rise because we have the 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 sexploitation through social media and things like that. So that's a different, that's a whole topic in itself, talking about our
mhm,
kids with the sexting and stuff.
mhm,
False promises are about 8%. That's probably
mm,
some jobs too. Or let you want to be a model. I have a modeling job for you. False promises.
mm,
Um, but the biggest trafficking situations would be familial trafficking.
Wow.
Familial trafficking. So out of the human trafficking number total, 28% of those are familial. Break that down,
Mhm.
40% are sex. So that's our, you know, a parent, aunt, uncle, cousin
Mm.
selling, you know, having their
mm,
family member sold for sex to pay rent, buy food, whatever the situation may be.
mm,
Familial trafficking is our biggest perpetrator of a trafficking
Wow.
situation. 24% intimate partners
Mm.
or child marriages, things like that. 24%. And 31% will be job offers. So that will be your labor. So that's how people get into trafficking situations. They can be born into them, a good portion of them,
Mm.
unfortunately. Um, but the vulnerable populations get lured into it, trying to find that family that will love them. The gangs do trafficking, sex trafficking, labor trafficking a lot with the
It's
runaways.
it's ironic that the first case of human trafficking in Scripture is
Mm,
familial, and that's Joseph.
yep,
mhm,
Where his brothers sell him, and So I mean,
hmm
this is something that's been with us from
forever.
antiquity. But I wanted to, Cerise, something you made mention of the 28 million
Mm,
people, and most people say, this human trafficking thing, I've never seen it before. That means that 1 out of every 10 people that we see in this
yes.
country may be a victim of human trafficking, and
hmm
which means that we've all seen it. We just don't know what to recognize when we see it. Do,
Mhm.
do
mhm.
you have any kind of signature visible signs that we could take note of that might tell us that we may be watching an experience where someone is being
hmm
trafficked?
I can pretty much guarantee we've all seen someone trafficked and
Yeah,
didn't
Wow.
know
yeah.
it. Okay.
Mm,
Wow.
Anybody who gets any type of service, those are big perpetrators of trafficking. So we're talking nail salons, we're talking hotels, we're talking restaurants, we're talking, there's just nowhere that it's not possible. if that makes sense. So I'm sure that we've all seen trafficking victims. Um, and just passing them by or just getting your service and going, you may not notice it, right? But we all here are in a unique community, right? We're all part of churches, so we should be touching and having contact with people. So you may only really know by relationships or conversations, um, asking people, how they're doing. It's just really hard to tell in a 5-minute service, right? If someone is being trafficked.
Sure.
I really don't have an answer for that just by a casual interaction. That's why I didn't mention this. I said I'm a nurse, but I'm in the middle of getting my forensic nurse examiner license because I want to be able to see people in that state of assault and be able to have that connection because I know that traffic victims come in through the emergency rooms and things like that a lot. And I feel like I want to be on the ground where I may be able to intervene. Um, but go ahead, somebody
No,
said this.
I wanted to ask you, since you are a health professional,
Hmm.
and you just mentioned you wanted to even go further
Hmm.
with your ability to detect and possibly service.
Hmm.
As a healthcare professional, say in a hospital or doctor's office, are there things that you look for specifically? If a person comes into, say, ER
Hmm.
and they have an injury or something like that, is there a process where you kind of investigate as you treat an individual?
Yes. So we have to do a violence screening. That's automatic now, and and that's something we would go through with questions. But for me, if someone typically they're going to come in with their abuser or trafficker or whomever. If
Hmm.
someone won't leave the room, they're controlling the situation. They're trying to answer for the person.
Hmm.
The person doesn't have access to their own identification or their own cell phone. Like the person with them is holding everything.
Mm.
That that is those are all telling signs. But just also regular behavior, not making eye contact. I mean, yes, people can be shy, but you have to look at the total situation. Like someone's with them, speaking for them, they're turning away, they won't answer. Then obviously the physical signs, bruising, things like that. But someone really controlling everything about them, they don't know where they live, they don't know their address, that person's answering everything for them,
Hmm.
that those would be red flags for me.
May I inject another question because
Hmm.
I've worked with groups here in the city of Philadelphia where I live. Can you speak to us a little bit about what's commonly called Stockholm syndrome,
Hmm.
where a person who is actually a victim of this kind of abuse will so identify with their captor, with their abuser, that even after they're being rescued, they kind of lean towards being kept in a state of captivity?
I Stockholm is a whole official diagnosis, but what I will say is most victims aren't ready to be rescued.
Hmm.
So that is going to be the majority of them. Our goal, like you have to have faith working with this population because it can be very disheartening. Like I said, a lot of people don't know they're being trafficked. We may see the signs, but they don't realize it. They think it's love. That's the only love they knew. That person gives them
Yeah,
food sometimes. They give
yeah.
them clothes sometimes. They didn't have that at home, so that's why they ran away to this situation. So, yes, they do identify with their traffickers very often. They will lie. They will lie about their age. They will lie about their crimes they commit because of their trafficking situation. They will cover for their traffickers. So that's just a part of it because again, like I said, sometimes they think that's love. That's the only love they know. Their threats, a young person, they may have threatened their family because they've groomed this person. So they know they have younger brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, mother, father, know where they live. There may be threats, there shame. They have videos of them being raped. Um, that they are saying they'll put out on the internet or to their school, because these kids may be going to school every day.
Wow.
There's so many reasons and situations. Just to think that somebody wants to be saved would be a misjudgment.
For those of us who are Christians, I mean, just to talk about what Cerise is saying, think about it almost from an evangelistic point of view, where you go out to save people. And their captor, the devil, is somebody that they've become very familiar with. You try to take the bottle from this, and don't you touch my captor,
Right.
I mean, and so
Right.
that's what we're looking at here. And that brings me to another question, Cerise, and maybe, Charles, you might have been going to it later, and please tell me if I'm stepping ahead of you. But
No, go right
so
ahead.
how do we help people
Right.
who in many instances see us as a threat to what they think is life and what we may recognize as captivity and danger?
That's an excellent question. So that's where the relationship building comes in to place, right? I mean, you can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. Me as a nurse, I'm providing health care to them. You have a bruise, you have an infection, tears, cuts, I'm going to care for them. But I'm also going to let them know that there's help for them, right? I may give them resources or information to resources. They may not be ready for it today, but tomorrow they may be, right? Obviously, we're going to be praying for these people, right? Because the Holy Spirit can do a lot more than we can ever do. But I would say relationship building, showing them that you care, because remember, they think this person cares. So if someone's caring more for them or better for them without harm, right, without physical abuse, you're giving them food and not asking for something in return. Like those are things that will help them gravitate towards us and away from their trafficker.
I wanted to ask a question as I was crunching information and data. I know globally there is trafficking, but let's focus on the United States.
Yep.
I understand that, I looked at, you go to the State Department, there's a lot of data out there. And my side comment to that is the data that we get from government agencies and from watch groups and what have you is probably lower than what it really is. But this is what we were able to see. But I went to I believe it was the State Department where I got this information about the 10 worst states for human trafficking in the United States. Can you speak to that?
I cannot. I don't know that specific data. I know that trafficking happens in every state. But yes, I would imagine the states with the bigger interstate highways, probably it happens a lot. Anybody who have ports, probably it happens a lot. I know we do a lot. We work in all the states. As far as Shared Hope, we work in all the states with lawmakers, trying to get the laws right, trying to get them up to standard where they are not criminalizing the victims and, putting money aside for restoration services. But I don't know what the 10 worst states are.
Okay, so I found them, and I want all of us to
and
see.
I probably agree with all of it. But go ahead.
I want all of us to listen as I list them. What commonality these states have? Number 1 is California.
California. Yeah.
Number 2, Texas. Number 3, Florida. Number 4, New York. Number 5, Michigan, and number 6, Ohio. Number 7, Georgia, and it goes on. But what do you see a commonality there with those states?
Yeah, they're around water. They have, but let's also say this: 2 of the top states are big states, like huge number of people, right? Major cities. Yeah.
Large number of immigrants.
Yes. Yes. They all have those ports where people coming in, and the immigration Yeah, there's a lot of work being done for immigration because we know those are, again, the vulnerable population.
Yeah. Philadelphia ranks very high on the list of states, locations with human trafficking.
Florida wasn't on that list. I was expecting to hear Florida.
Oh, it
Yeah.
probably is. I didn't go through all 10.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that there are others, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yet they
guess-
leave Ron DeSantis,
yeah,
I shouldn't have said that.
yeah. I think that I think the border issue is probably a feeder for this crisis. Because these people are, when they come across the border for whatever reason, whether it's asylum or they just want a better life or whatever, many of them are treated inhumanly. These are precious human lives that are really trying to live. And when you send busloads of people
Yeah.
to another state,
Yeah.
without a program, without a process, and literally they just roll into the city in buses and they dump them
Right.
in cities.
Yes, and they get trafficked very easily.
I think what was sobering for me is hearing the percentage of familial, association with it. And I was, as I was listening to that just now, I was like, there's probably a little bit of an overlap too, because sometimes when families come over, sometimes a parent may use their children they may, I don't know, say dedicate their children, but they may turn their children over to human trafficking to support the family. So it's like, it's almost a double, they're in a dire situation. They use their family, especially their young girls or young men, as a way to get the family ahead. So it's like, I mean, it's just sobering to me because I feel like when I think of human trafficking initially, I did think about people come over and being in a situation, not realizing that a lot of it deals with family members actually taking advantage of this and pimping out their own children or loved ones for their own gain.
It happens a lot. And my most heartbreaking thing about the familial trafficking, I do awareness training. That's my passion and goal, is to make people more aware to prevent a trafficking situation. If I'm doing a talk at a school, then friend will notice that another friend is getting groomed. That's my goal, to prevent it, right? But familial trafficking isn't preventable. The only thing with familial trafficking we can try to do is try to recognize it and get them out as quickly as possible.
Right. If we could recognize grooming, what does that mean when someone's being groomed? And I understand from grooming, I talked with a woman who dealt with the specialty, and she said sometimes people are groomed for a couple of years. It's not something they do, in a few weeks, but they're slowly grooming this person for the end game of trafficking.
Yes. I mean, I won't say that it usually takes a couple years, but they're dedicated. These people, there are books out there on how to groom someone and, how to lure them to trafficking. Pimps write books. Like, they are dedicated. A lot more dedicated than our kids are, in figuring out if someone is grooming them or not. They are dedicated and they know all the right things to say and do to get to the end result.
So I want to pivot a little bit. I don't know, Tally, did you have something you wanted to insert here? Because I'm going to pivot a little bit.
It was just one word. I was just wondering, can we use another word as we talk about trafficking that will broaden, make it more accessible to people who may not understand what we're saying? Trafficking is actually slavery, isn't it, Cerise?
It is. It's modern day slavery.
Yeah.
It absolutely is.
Okay.
If you're being trafficked, if you're under 18, you can't consent, right? So if you are trading sex for money, you're automatically considered trafficked. If you're over 18 and you're trading like sex for money, then fraud or coercion has to be proven. But yes, I can be 18 if I'm having sex for money because I have no choice, because I need a house, or I need to be able to eat, and someone's taking my profits, then I'm still considered trafficked. So if you're doing things through coercion, fraud, force, you're being trafficked. And yes, slavery is equatable word. Yeah.
Sometimes I ask myself, I've gone to, stores, shopping centers, or whatever, a grocery store, Walmart. And, there's always a bulletin board somewhere saying missing, or have you seen this child? And how we just walk by it. I don't ever see, including myself, I don't ever see anybody staring at that saying, let me see if I've seen this kid around or whatever. And that speaks to some level of insensitivity or uncaring, because it's not your child. It becomes front and center if it's your child or your relative. But I wanted to pivot to houses of worship. How prepared should houses of worship be to identify and provide services for people that we suspect? It may not be, or if we have proof, fine. If we have proof, what do we do next? If we suspect, what do we do? Because I understand, the general public understands that sometimes houses of worship can be a cause of trafficking. So how do we deal with that as Christ-centered people, houses of worship? How should we deal with that in our communities?
My personal opinion is, if you're a house of worship and you haven't been trained on trafficking, and if you're not having some type of training to be trauma informed, like, you should not be functioning. Like, how can you call yourself a house of worship and you can't identify someone's trauma and respond in a trauma informed way?
I'm going to interject something that most of us might see a little bit oblique, but as church and religious communities, we are conditioned to accept it. I'm going to show you something where all of us participate in a mindset that is accepting of it, and most of us do it on a regular basis. Repeat the only commandment that we ever quote in our churches. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy.
Right.
6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But on the seventh day thou shalt do no work. Thou nor thy sons nor thy daughters, thy
maid servant,
your slaves.
Right.
In other words, there's an accommodation of thought. Yeah. There's an accommodation of thought that says, hey, it's all right to have people who are being held against their will.
Right. Because they definitely did it in the Bible all the time, right?
All the time.
All the time.
I mean, later on, I have some examples of glaring examples of trafficking, but please continue.
Yeah. I think someone was upset when I was saying Esther was trafficked. They were like, oh. I'm like, yeah. Okay.
They're so busy singing "One Night with a King," and they don't realize that she was basically trafficked.
She was trafficked. But yes, our houses of worship should know the signs, and they should know what to do. They should know what number to call when they suspect a situation. We are supposed to be there for the community. We are supposed to be doing outreach. So to have those programs and not know the signs is just, I mean, I can't even think of a bad enough word for that.
Well, let me ask my clergy colleagues here. What might you be doing or planning to do in your church?
Have an awareness day.
Yay! Let me just say this. DHS has a program, a blue campaign. They will mail you tons of free material, posters. I did a training at my church, and they have the posters up that list the signs with the phone number. Like, this can be front and center.
Yeah, you mentioned an acronym there. Did you say VHS?
Department of Homeland Security.
Department of Homeland Security.
Yes, they will ship you materials like easily with no problem. 250, like, it doesn't matter. Posters, brochures. So getting the information and doing an awareness day is easy. It's not hard at all. My organization, Shared Hope, is a faith-based organization. So they have a faith in action kit. It's not free, but they have a kit where it will they'll send, it has information like for sermons, you could use, tailored to VBS or Sabbath school. Like the information is there, um, and available. So there's no reason not to have an awareness day. Then there's me. I love to do it.
Absolutely.
Your information.
Marlena, and Marlena is one of the most involved pastors in the community. I can't think of anybody else that is intentional about that. What are your thoughts and your plan on that?
Well, I can say, Cerise, I am one of those who are guilty of not pushing this as much. I mean, we've talked a lot about, other abuses and things like that, but not so much human trafficking. And the more and more I'm hearing of how huge it is like, and then that there's no real prevention. And I mean, I was under the myth as well that, these people were taken captive, against their will. And then when I started studying and I found out, no, they're not, it's a trusting system with those who are extremely vulnerable, and boys as well as girls, which I knew that part. And I'm often talking to my own two sons, be careful, because they traffic boys too, but
oh yeah,
is and then when you were saying how we must be very intentional on loving them, I said, well, you can't even tell sometimes who they are because they're covering, and they think they don't even know that they're being trafficked.
Right.
It's very hard to pick them out, but certainly more than now, I know I'm going to do awareness, just to keep my church members alert, and we do meet a lot of people because we're out in the community a lot.
Right.
And you don't even know, you could be thinking, that they're reserved or whatever for other reasons, but it's really human trafficking. So I'm quiet because I'm blown away at what I learned and even what's been shared here today. But definitely, I think, Miss Cerise, I'm going to have you at my church. This is really
I would love it.
interesting, really, and very scary too, because we think of how our children in the church are so gullible, and naive, and many of them get angry with the parents and run off, and they'll believe strangers over those whom they love, and it's just a very dangerous situation.
And our youth and not just the internet, but the gaming systems, because the traffickers are really using the gaming systems. Like there's a whole program on training and awareness on that, right? Because our kids are on these gaming systems, and so are the traffickers. And again, I already said they're patient. They will wait and they will groom them. And as parents, our kids don't tell us everything. We think they're happy and fine and everything's all good. And they're getting groomed by someone who's giving them what they needed that day, or, so that's a whole other issue. Another issue when we're talking about making awareness in our churches, our youth ministers really, really, really need to be getting trained on this stuff with the sexploitation. Is it sexploitation? I can't even remember if I'm saying it right, but
You
really
are.
what's big right now are our kids getting exploited and for money, and then committing suicide, okay, because someone is threatening to expose their pictures, and they're so ashamed and they want money. They don't have the money. They are ashamed to go to their parents and ask for the money. Like, it's a huge problem right now. So that's the last thing we want. We don't want our kids to be so shamed that they won't come to us when they're having a situation, no matter what the situation is. But that's what these exploiters do. They definitely use the shame and guilt.
I want to ask Patrick, as a youth director, a pastor, one who loves youth, even during Camp Davis, which is wrapping up, are there any prevention or what should I say, awareness programs that are available in our churches through the youth department, and even more specifically through Pathfinders, because that's a very wide range, of ages there, male and female, in terms of awareness within the Pathfinder organization.
No, not when we say the word trafficking. I think what we do locally is kind of we look for more background checks. We look for more if the crime has been committed before. There's no real way of catching up with any of what we're talking about. We deal with what has already been done. So you can have a trafficker in your church and you don't know because they have not been caught yet.
Right.
There's, we do have training. And come on, we're the UpSet podcast. Sad to say, the training does not come from our church concerning this type of thing. So we deal with like ACA camps that talk to us about when we go on trips and when the kids go into bathrooms. We're not talking about them going into bathrooms and something happening to them sexually. We're talking about them going into bathrooms and being taken. You understand what I'm saying? So we deal more with what may happen to them in certain situations, whereas we need to deal with other factors. One of the reasons why we take phones from them is because they have friends that will come to the grounds. They have their point systems. They're where they know where to find them. They also take pictures where on the pictures they have the location of where they are, the geotags. So there's so many. The answer is no. We're not as proactive as we should be. We're only proactive as, okay, stepmom or stepdad or father estranged may come and take their kids. We deal with those type of things more than we deal with, hey, come over brother and sister so-and-so's house for 2 or 3 days, and all of a sudden you have something bigger going on. And I know we're afraid to say it. Some of it is not sex. It's work. So you may be looking at your local cleaners. You may be looking at the summer jobs. I'm putting that in parentheses, summer in quotations. The summer jobs that they could be at, that we say, okay, go ahead and work and make some money. We don't know what they're doing. So we could be better. We could do a whole lot better as far as that's concerned.
But speaking on that, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I am working with somebody who I'm connected to through Shared Hope. I'm trying to get a patch requirement for trafficking that I was going to present. I was going to go through the process to present for adventurers and Pathfinder clubs.
Yes.
I'm working on that.
And by the way, it's not as difficult as you may think it may be to get those patches, as long as they're simple, understanding what it is. It may be 10 different factors that need to be known in order to, and a patch can be ready to be on their sash so that they'll be aware.
Right.
Yeah, so something you said, Pat, made me think of another tactic. You were talking about friends telling friends, and I know that sometimes groomers or traffickers can use children to recruit other children. So
absolutely,
your friend over there, are they looking for a job, or do they need? And next thing you know, you have like this cycle of other teens or young people recruiting others, maybe not even being aware of what they're doing, thinking they're helping out a friend or
they usually know. So the traffickers, they're called spotters. Okay. Spotters get the information on the person and give it to the recruiter.
I want to add this. I'm sorry. I want to add this also, that sometimes, and I'll use it because I know family members, Caribbean, Spanish, they'll work. We call it home health care. We call them all kinds of different names, when really they are underwhelmingly underpaid. I'm sorry, they're underpaid, work for little or nothing, that's considered trafficking also.
Right.
And then okay, you won't until you reach a certain amount of money. We'll give you back your passport, or we'll
Yeah.
give you back your
That they
paperwork, or
hold
we'll
your
give you back
passport. Right.
Mm.
Yeah.
we
Problem.
sometimes look at the Eastern. We look at Chinese, Korean. We look at in that area when we're not looking in our area
Right.
in this
Mhm.
part of the hemisphere that these type of things are occurring.
Yes.
Let me
So,
let me ask one
can I
question. Oh,
ask
go ahead,
a question
Mark.
real quick? Cerise, with this being such a huge network, because I'm like, where are all these traffickers? There's
Right.
some underground system, right? I've heard people say, and I don't know if this is myth or truth, that there must be governmental involvement. Do you have any information on that?
There will never be any information on that.
Mhm.
um, do I think it's possible for it to be so big? I won't say the government, and this is Cerise speaking, not
Mhm.
anything written, documented anywhere. I won't necessarily say there's a government involvement. There are probably people high up in the government
Mhm.
who are part of the trafficking, um, because just follow the money. Okay. Trafficking is pulling in, is one of the fastest growing illicit criminal enterprises, right? It's probably out doing drugs. I know it's out doing guns because it's easier and cheaper to traffic a human than it is to get drugs and guns.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You have to buy them, right? And and then sell it. No, a human you just get off the street or whatever,
And
right?
not only
So
that, you get caught with a human, there's no crime. You get caught with a gun,
right,
you get arrested.
right.
Yeah.
And so they're pulling in 150 billion a year,
Wow.
right? So can
Whoa.
we really legitimately think that nobody high up is involved?
From I had a when I worked for the mayor's office here in the city of Philadelphia, we were part of a couple of
Hmm.
forces that dealt with this, and you wouldn't find it's not so much that you have government involvement,
Right.
it's that you may have benign neglect that allows these things
That's
to
that
happen
part.
with the government just not paying careful attention or not being concerned enough. The same way that you would have neglect in churches. I mean,
Right.
there are many people who the real issue here is the value of a human being, the value of
Mhm.
human worth.
Right.
Hmm.
That at times we buy into the fact that some people are not worth as much as other people,
Mhm.
That
and
part.
that creates the seed bed for this kind of behavior. And it's all throughout Scripture. Like for example, the Sabbath commandment includes a countenancing of people who can be enslaved or who can be trafficked, your
Right.
manservant and your maidservant.
Right.
Mm.
Listen to this passage. This is Amos chapter 2. For 3 sins of Israel, even for 4, I will not relent. They sell the innocent for silver and the needy for a pair of shoes. They trample on the heads of the poor as on the dust of the ground. I mean,
It's
the
been
beginning of
forever.
the
Mm.
beginning of Christ's ministry is the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, for he has anointed me to preach good things to the poor, because we've always had this strata of human value that allows
Mhm.
some people to be
Mhm.
eligible to be
Mhm.
treated like merchandise.
Mhm.
So I wanted
Absolutely.
to speak on what you said about participating in a task force. So when we were talking about what can the church do, our
Mhm.
church leaders should be involved or at least know of their local task force. It's usually Googleable, like human
Mhm.
trafficking task force for whatever your area is.
Yeah.
So, seeing how you can help
That's good.
those, finding out if there are any local organizations, whether shelters or whatever, that need resources for victims. And it was something else you said. Um, oh
Hmm.
gosh, it escaped me. But the task force for sure.
Mhm.
And it was something else. Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to kind of wrap up because we did talk about what is considered state-sponsored, support of this. And I don't know, so you couldn't dwell on it because we really don't have any data points about state-sponsored trafficking in our
At least
country.
not in the United States, but in other
Right.
countries. Yeah.
Right. I noticed on the State Department's website, they said that there are at least 11 governments with a documented policy or pattern of human trafficking in government-funded programs, forced labor in government sectors, sexual slavery in government camps, or the employment or recruitment of child soldiers. These governments are, and I'm sure there are more, Afghanistan, Burma, China, Iran, North Korea, Russia, it goes on and on. So internationally, there are some state-sponsored. Now, they may deny it. They may say, oh, no. So you're saying we're intentionally doing this, but in fact, they are.
Right. I mean, in our own country, we still have states that child marriage is legal. So that's definitely high opportunity for someone to be trafficked when you have child marriages that are legal.
Cerise, I have this quick question, just for my understanding. I know that you stated that, people will not seek help, and oftentimes they don't even know that they're being trafficked. But those who do call in, what's the stimulus that finally makes them call in?
Oh, it varies. They could have been beaten in an inch of their life, and maybe they're like, that's it, I want to get out. I think every situation would vary if they want to get out. Maybe they just had enough for whatever reason. They're hungry enough, scared enough that is more pressing than what kept them there.
So something has really happened to cause them to want to reach out, something traumatic to them.
Or not always traumatic. Sometimes it's they see something that triggers an awareness. For example, they look at another child who is not going through what they're going through, and they say, "You know what? Wait a minute. I'm
Why can't I
not
live
being
like
treated
that?
right. Yeah.
Why I can't live like them? Right? Yeah.
Okay.
There's just one other statistic, and I want you to tell me if there's any credence to this. I came across an article that was posted in the Rocky Mountain Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. This was posted back in August of 2021. There's an organization called Beneath Our Wings, and they do very similar work to what you're doing, Cerise. They made a statement I thought was startling. I wanted to run this by you to see if there was any credence from your background and your research in this. And it says the founder of this organization, which is based in Wyoming, explains that 47% of pastors support or contribute to human trafficking by viewing pornography.
Oh, I believe that. Absolutely.
Wow, that didn't take you long, Cerise.
No.
Cerise said I was waiting to make that point.
No. When you say by viewing pornography,
good reverends out there.
No, when you say, if you had said some other means, I would be like, okay, probably not true. But pornography is the biggest perpetrator of trafficking. Okay, so yes, Shared Hope has a group under them called Defenders. That's all men. It's the men's side of the ambassadors where they raise awareness. And part of that is getting men off of pornography because we know how much it contributes to trafficking. Let's be clear. Trafficking would not exist without a demand. Okay? So when you have men who want pornography, who want to have sex with people, someone's going to provide that for them. Right? So, yes.
And just
I don't know. I haven't seen that specific statistic, but it's very believable.
Yeah, and I wanted to emphasize pastors because some people feel like, oh, the church is a place of
safety,
refuge and I can go there,
and they don't think they're doing anything wrong. So that's the thing. They're like, I'm not hurting anyone.
Right, and we've seen many stories and cases about Catholic priests have been caught
Mhm.
with, that sort of thing. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there that, we have issues within the house of worship that need to be addressed and dealt with as well.
And that's a awareness thing because
Mhm.
most people, I'm not going to just single out men, but most people who watch pornography don't feel that they're harming anyone
Hmm.
because
Right,
they're not there. They're not doing the
right,
action, right?
right.
And but they are, like you said, not doing something is doing something. So
Good point.
that that's something that I'm glad you brought up because that's a huge issue. But I remember my other point um, about what else the church can be doing. Getting to know their local task force, getting advocating for laws. When you talked about the states that are the biggest hubs for trafficking, part of it, outside of the demand being an issue that keeps trafficking going. Not having the right laws in place keeps trafficking going. When you're criminalizing the victims and not the perpetrators,
Mhm.
when you don't have money allocated for resources to help restore these victims, they're going to go back. Like if you don't have somewhere to put them that's safe and housing
Mhm.
and food
Mhm.
and jobs
Mhm.
and like what's going to happen? They're going to go back, right? So, having state funding and the right laws in place is important, and that's something the church community can easily be involved in by. I email my state legislators all the time
Mm.
when there's a bill coming up. This bill's coming up, blah blah blah. Like I need you to vote
Yeah.
yes for it.
Mm.
And Shared Hope actually has an advocacy page where I get a text message or email like this is on the books, like email your legislator, and it's plug and play, and it to just help get our laws in place.
Well, Cerise, I want to thank you for your
Mhm.
great knowledge and experience and your passion for this and
Yes.
coming on the show to inform us and sensitize us to a very real problem. Um, I do think any of our listeners who are listening to this, and we do have many pastors who listen to UpSet podcasts,
Mhm.
um, we need to get on the ball here and be
Mhm.
informed and tap into a source like you to bring us up to speed as to what we can do. You mentioned something really important in your last statement, and that is there are resources and there are ways that houses of worship can have an effect on dealing with individuals that we come across. Because one of the weaknesses that we may have is, oh yeah, we identified a person as being trafficked,
Hmm.
some of our members of our church. So what do we do now?
Right.
Who do we call? What do we do? Do we
You
have a
okay?
program within our church,
Right.
that could literally rescue this person,
That would be awesome.
in a legal way, in a
Right.
proper way?
Well,
Yeah.
God
So.
willing, that's a goal of mine actually. I want to be able to have a home for survivors.
Mm,
But from the church standpoint, right now today,
oh
Hmm.
no.
Yeah.
A little break in the
Yeah. A little break in
connection.
the. While we're waiting for
oh, sorry.
Teresa, you
Okay.
back? Okay, there you
Okay.
are.
Yes, she's
Okay.
back.
If you suspect, you don't have to have all the facts, you don't have to have proof. You don't just suspect someone's being trafficked, call the human trafficking hotline. It's their job. They will figure it out, right?
Mhm.
We don't have to figure it out. So you would just call 888-373-7888.
I think I have some numbers. I think
Yes,
yeah.
that's the main one, the human trafficking hotline. Great. So again, don't think, oh, I don't want to get someone in trouble. Oh, I don't have proof. Just call if you suspect.
Mhm.
And just in adding from a governing perspective, do not call the police. I mean, because the
Call the
police,
trafficking hotline.
yeah, the police, you know the old saying that if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail.
Mm.
Yeah.
The police involvement is to come and arrest people and to try to get immediate control of the situation, which is typically so disruptive it makes things worse for the people
Much
being
worse.
trafficked. So don't
Right.
call the police. That's first. The second thing, as Adventist churches, and I know we're speaking primarily to Adventists, as a person who's had the privilege of living most of my life outside of the Adventist circle, Adventists tend to involve themselves in things that they can control or manage. And because we can't control or manage the situation, we tend to not be connected to anything involved in it. So learn how to become a part of other community activities that you're not in control of, but where you can form relationships with people, learn things from them. And I will be the first to tell you, you will be surprised that there are people who have valuable things to offer who are not a part of the remnant church. So,
Right.
please just involve
Absolutely.
yourself and get to know other folks. In the city of Philadelphia, there are several houses that I know. Ardella's house is one. I mean, where this is all they do. They work on these kind of things, and they can help you to learn more about it.
Amen.
I think that's
Absolutely.
also my takeaway from this discussion. One, educating ourselves on issues that are affecting our communities, even if we may not see it in our circle, but to hear that statistic of 28 million, I mean, that should be enough to say, oh, this is affecting people.
Yeah.
But also the second part, and you mentioned it too, Tally, and Cerise mentioned earlier, building relationships. Being more intentional about engaging people in conversation, because that is where you find your greatest strength in being able to help people who in some cases don't even realize they need help. But if we don't have a relationship with them, it prevents us from being able to show them the situation that they're really in and get them the help that they need. So
Right.
this has been very helpful for me in terms of that.
Well, I want to officially hand off to Latasha to close us out. Bill, thank you. Oh, Tally, sorry.
It's according to whatever the law I'm running from this week.
Thank you for your assistance on this topic, and
man.
I hope that our
Great job,
listeners and
Charles.
subscribers will look at this again. Maybe show it to your churches. Maybe show it to your pastor. You can get a lot of mileage out of this episode if you think of using it that way. Tasha?
And thank you so much. Thanks for leading us. And Cerise, I just want to thank you so much for the wealth of knowledge that you were able to share.
Very.
Oh, I hope it was helpful. That's always my goal.
Where are you operating from, Cerise?
Yeah.
I'm in Maryland, the
Okay.
DC area.
All right.
So you mentioned that you're available to share with churches. Now, I don't know how you want people to reach out to you. Do you want them to reach out to you directly? Do you want them to reach out to us and we share that information with you?
Oh, either way is fine. I'm open. I welcome this type of contact. Email, cell phone, text, all of it.
Okay. All right.
And
So
I
that's-
actually I'll email you some links
okay, perfect. We can add that in
that
the,
you can share.
show notes. Okay. And you also mentioned that kit that churches can purchase. Will that be one of the links? Okay.
Yes,
Perfect.
absolutely.
Because listen, it has everything in the box for you. Sometimes we're like,
Everything is perfect.
Sermons,
Oh my
posters.
A small group Bible study. It's really
Wow.
So it takes the guesswork out of what churches can do. And so I think that's awesome. I definitely want to share those numbers again to report suspected human trafficking. There's that number there in English. And
if I come and speak, I bring material with me too.
Okay.
Not the Faith in Action kit, but I bring other
resources.
Yes. Definitely.
Okay, awesome. All right. Well, we thank you so much again for what you shared with us. We hope that those who are watching have a new awareness and a dedication to this cause. And as always, we thank our viewers for engaging us in this topic. We look forward to your comments in the chat. And of course, we'll be back here again, same place, same time next Sunday, because if it's Sunday,
it's time to go to work tomorrow on Monday.
Yeah, have a good week.
It's the UpSet podcast. Everybody. And don't forget to support our UpSet store. These are some of the causes that your funds we could probably donate a kit to a church with some of the funds we raised this month from our UpSet store. So go please continue to support it. Visit aec.org/upset. All right, guys, have a wonderful week. We'll see you back here next time.
Bye. Take
Bye.
care.
Bye. Have a good week.